Hey y'all, are you guys looking for recipes that you can make ahead and they freeze beautifully and they don't involve lots of creams or the dreaded word casserole? Well, friends, I have a delicious 3 recipes that I know your family will enjoy, and it is in the freezer for weeks and months to come. Welcome, y'all. My name is Heather, and thanks for joining me here at Finance Working Mama. I decided to do these 3 recipes for actually a client of mine. His wife is having a pretty extensive surgery actually today, and she's the one that gets the house together and feeds the kids and feeds everyone. She's definitely going to have a lot of recovery time. So I thought I'd make 3 really great recipes that will already be completely made. So all they have to do is either, if they choose to freeze them, they just need to thaw them and warm them up in the oven, or they can just individually heat them up in the microwave for the portion that they want to eat. So with all that being said, I'm going to do 3. None of them are casseroles. I try to really think about what was the best for kids. They have 2 kids, 2 boys that are about my children's ages. And, that period is, they might eat everything you put in front of them, or they might be picky. So I try to choose things that I know my kids like, and my kids are pretty picky, that I figured if my kids will eat them, they should be able to eat them, and they're flavors that really all kids like. The first one I'm going to share with you is a pork chop potato bake, and it is all goodness. It's pork chops with potatoes, hash brown potatoes, and cheese. What would you not enjoy about that? So let's get started and get that ready, baked, and cooked for this family. Now, as you can see, I have it sort of laid out. I do all my ingredients, so that way I don't miss the ingredients, and it makes the process go by so fast. I cut up all the vegetables, I get out all my spices, I do open all the cans, get the meat, and do it set up by recipe on my bar. So that way this process goes a lot faster. So let's get started. All right, y'all, let's start with some olive oil in the pan. I'm using my handy dandy skillet, my cast iron skillet. And the recipe calls for 6 pork chops. So I have my 6 pork chops right here, and it does ask to season the pork chops. You can hear the shaking. That is my pit bull in the background. If you haven't met him in previous videos, his name is Bladen. He is a noisy little thing. All right, so I have this farm dust seasoning that I got. The recipe calls for seasoning salt. I think you could use and season your pork chops however you would like. Turn that on to medium high. Now, what we want to do with this, friends, is we're not going to cook these through, because we just want them nice and seared on the pan, because we're going to pull them off, and then we're going to assemble the rest of the tomato bake and top it, and then pop it in the oven for it to cook for the remainder of the time. Now, what I have learned about pork chops is if you cook them too much, they will be like hockey pucks. So it's really, really important not to overcook these. Now, I do have 6 very thick pork chops, so I picked the thick ones to help with the fact that it wouldn't overcook, especially if you're going to be in the oven for about 20 minutes. You want to season this really, really well. All those pork chops. Don't be chintzy on the seasoning. I think this has, let's see, salt, pepper. I'm sorry, it doesn't have, this is, salt, dried onion, garlic, black pepper, fennel seed, sage, and oregano and basil, and a little thyme and rosemary. So it has like everything in this particular thing. It's called Farm Dust. I got it at a Dutch Country store up in Michigan. Those are one of my favorite stores because they have the best things to find if you're a big cook. And we'll make sure this is nice and hot on medium high, because I want a nice sear on those pork chops. Now you don't want to overcrowd your pan. So I don't think all of these are going to fit in. Remember, there's 6 nice pork chops. I don't know, I might can fit all of them in there. We'll season them again. All right, friends, it's been about 3 minutes, and so I'm going to check to see if they are ready to turn. We want a nice brown sear on each side of these pork chops. Yeah. This is about what you want to see. See that nice little brown right there? This is the second side, and the first side, some of them only took like 3 minutes. Apparently, my pan's a tad uneven, and the others took about 5 minutes. So guys, these are looking good. Look at that. Woo, beautiful coloring. These are really where I want them to be. And I'm going to check the temp. Now, keep in mind, I don't want to cook them until they're done, but I do want to see where they're registering at temperature, so I know that they're not overcooked, because they're going to go in the oven with potatoes for another about 30 to 35 minutes. So these are out about 110, so they're a good temperature. A medium pork chop is about 145, so this should get at least to a medium through that cooking process. All right, let's pull them off. Ooh, isn't that pretty? That is pretty. That's called flavor, y'all. Flavor. That one gets so brown. Okay, our wet ingredients start with a can of cream of celery soup. Now you're saying, Heather, this isn't a casserole. This isn't a casserole. It's called a potato bake. Okay? I think a casserole is just way too creamy and got too much cream in it, in my opinion. This has a different, because you have all the potatoes that are going to be in the dish. A half a cup of, I'm doing light sour cream, just because I buy everything light because I can't taste the difference. Maybe my palate is not as developed as other people's palates. And then we have a half a cup of milk. Again, I'm using 2% milk to this. 1/4 of a teaspoon of black pepper. Get this well incorporated together before adding the most delicious part, which is the potato. So I found this recipe, like I said, in that church cookbook. It's a church, probably about 40 minutes. It was actually a Christmas gift someone gave me. They knew that I love cooking, and they thought, oh, she'll love this. And I have. I've enjoyed reading the recipes in it. And I made this dish for a friend, and she was like, it's Mare Royal if she's watching. I made it for her for Christmas, and she was like, oh my word, this is delicious. And I made it for another friend, and they said the same thing. So this is a hit. And I think it just has to do with the basics, folks. It's the potatoes and the pork chops. It's a good combination. You need it says a 24-ounce bag of these shredded hash browns. They only make them in 26 ounces, not 24. More potatoes, the better. Just pour all of it in there. And you know what I find interesting, folks? This is like one of my few recipes that I don't put garlic or onion in it. So my friends who are not friends of, or I'm sorry, I do put onion in it. I apologize. There is onion. I just don't put garlic. You'll see the onion part in just a second. And yes, you can use frozen from freezer to this dish. You don't have to wait for it to thaw out. You can just continue preparing it, even if it's frozen potatoes. Now, as you can see, that liquid, or the cream of celery, the milk, and the sour cream, it's not overly creamy or what I call casserole-y. It's like just enough wet ingredients to coat the potatoes and make it delicious. Is the French fried onions. Now they say use a whole container. This is a bigger container. Got this at Aldi. What I like about this, it's actually made in Holland. I saw this the other day. It was made in Holland, or it's made in Holland, and it doesn't have all the really bad ingredients in them, like I guess the traditional name brand. So I'm going to do probably just half of that can, because I think that is just enough. My youngest one, she absolutely adores eating onions. She eats them raw, she eats them cooked. She'll eat them any way that you give them. She reminds me of me when I was her age. Okay, once you get this all well incorporated together, get those French onion crispiness mixed in with potatoes, then you just need to get a 9 by 13 inch greased casserole dish. And I will tell you folks, this is a good breakfast too. If you have leftover, if you eat all the pork chops and have leftover potatoes, make yourself a fried egg and these potatoes. Oh my word, it is delicious. Now the recipe tells you to go ahead and mix in cheese. Now what I like to do, put the cheese on top of it. And it says only a cup of cheese. Do y'all really measure cheese? Just asking. Put in the comments below if you actually, unless you're cooking for, watching your calories, do you really measure cheese? Because I do not. The reason why I don't mix the cheese in the potatoes or really into dishes is because sometimes I feel like that the cheese gets just lost in all the ingredients. That way you have a nice cheesy pull when you scoop up the potatoes. That's just my preference, y'all. You can mix in a half a cup of cheese, and then you can top it with cheese. That's what the recipe calls for. I'm going to just squish these in here. And the goal is to get all 6 of them in. Now, if y'all can smell these pork chops, they smell so good. Oh my word. Oh, I think we're going to be able to squish every single one of them in there. And yeah, I'm going to pour all of it in there, because that's all the flavor. It is every bit the flavor you want. We are going to add a little more cheese all the way around it, because more cheese is better than no cheese. Now we're just going to bake it in the oven for 40 minutes. Only reason why I'm doing this, friends, is to make sure that cheese does not burn. You can wait until after it cooks. I call it tinting. Let's see here. Yeah. Just tint it. I don't want to smush it. Just tint it, because I don't want the cheese to... And you can spray, but it still gets... In my opinion, you can spray it and it still gets caught, which is very annoying. Friends, this is the end result. I covered it for 30 minutes, baked it at 350 degrees. Then I took off the foil and let it cook for another 10 minutes. The pork chops are cooked perfectly at 145 degrees. So they're a perfect medium. And those potatoes, I did a little quality check. right there at the edge. Had to make sure it's seasoned correctly. It is on point. All right, friends, the next thing I'm going to make is a taco spaghetti. Taco spaghetti. I mean, I haven't met one kid that doesn't like the flavoring of taco, the taco seasoning flavor. And I figured this could be a winner. Who doesn't love pasta? Who doesn't love the taco seasoning? And this is really easy to put together. Great to freeze after being fully cooked and easy to reheat. So you need 1 pound of ground beef. Now this is 80-20. It's a little bit fattier than I usually use, but we will remove the grease from the pan to make it a little bit lighter. All right, next thing it's asking for 1/4 cup of diced onions. And then 2 to 3 cloves of garlic. And I say, friends, do what your heart wants you to do. We're going to glob it in there. And get it all browned up. All right, so it's nice and brown. I'm going to push all the ground beef to the side of the pan. I'm going to let, I live in a 112-year-old house or 111-year-old house. It's old house. And either the countertop isn't quite even or the house isn't even. It's probably a combination of all of it. But on this end of the stove, if I push all the meat on that side, all the oil drains this way. So I'm going to turn that off just a sec because it is scorching hot. All right, friends, once you get it all browned, the grease removed, drained out of your pan, then you want to go to the next step, which is adding an entire package of taco seasoning. The recipe also calls for 2 cups of beef broth. Now I have turned my pan back up to medium. Get this well incorporated. The recipe also calls for like rotel, tomatoes, and diced chilies. Juice in everything. Also calls for an 8-ounce can of tomato sauce. Right, this is looking delicious, friends. Once you get all of that well incorporated, then you want to add 8 ounces of spaghetti pasta. Now, friends, I'm going to do something that the Italian would never do, and that is break the pasta. Only because, let me see if I can do it. I want it to fit in my pan better and get it properly submerged because the pasta does have to be completely submerged in the water. And I have found that if you do that, break it, especially for this pan, water. However, if your pasta is not covered completely, just add some more broth or more water until all your pasta is covered up. All right, friends, when it's this is it rolling? Oh my Lord, I can't say the word. Friends, when it gets to this level of simmering, you want to top it. That's a lot of noise. Top it, and you want to turn it down to medium low or low. All right, let's see, it's been 10 minutes. Now, the spaghetti does need to cook a little bit more. But we're going to break it up and get it well incorporated with the beef and tomatoes, because to me, that's like the hardest part when you add pasta to a sauce, is getting all that goodness wrapped up in it. All right, so I'm going to let it cook for about 5 more minutes. Let's see how it looks. Ooh. I think this is the perfect amount like of sauce. If you had too much liquid in your pan, you just take the cover off and just keep letting it simmer until the appropriate amount of sauce you want. Thickness, I guess. But this to me looks perfect. All right, friends, we need some quality control. I want to make sure it's good. I'm going to take me a little little taste test. I can't be delivering food that's unedible. Get all the goodness here. Let's see. All right, let's see here. This is delicious. Delicious. That 8-ounce can of tomato sauce just, I think, makes the entire dish. It really does. All right, friends, I'm going to put this in this 9x13 pan because I'm going to deliver it. This, when the husband comes in handy, I have the worst wrists. My wrists are so weak. There we go. I think I did it. Yay! I mean, what is a taco dish without some tacos with cheese? So if y'all are wondering how much cheese I have used over the course of these 3 recipes, it's been basically 16 ounces of cheese. So 2 8-ounce blocks of cheese that I've shredded. I started with just like a block and a half, and then I realized I'm heavy-handed with the cheese. So you can use as much cheese as you'd like, friends. Let's get started on the very last recipe I want to share with you, and it's called Chef John's American Goulash. And I looked for American Goulash, top-rated American Goulash, and this one popped up as 4.8 stars, and it had over 500 positive comments, which is hard to find. So it is very similar to my recipe, other than it does use some marinara sauce, some spaghetti pasta sauce in it, which, yum, I think that would be fantastic. So let me show you how it comes all together. Just like any delicious recipe, we're going to start off with a pound of ground beef. You could use whatever ground meat you'd like, but we're choosing to use, this is a 80-20 ground beef, so we're going to have to take some of the grease off, but I've got my pan over here heating up. I'm using one of my larger stock pans because it's going to be a lot going on, and I don't want to have like spillage on my stove to clean up for later. So put a little bit of oil. I got it heated up, a pound into the pan. It calls for 1, I got in here like 3 small chopped onions. I chop it all together at one time because I hate chopping onions. So I'm going to use probably a little bit more than 1/4 of this. Two cloves of garlic, or how much ever garlic you enjoy. That was like 2 cloves, you think? All right. My hamburger and onions and garlic are nice and brown. I'm going to get all the grease out of the pan. Once you get all the grease out of the pan, turn it back on. Medium. I'm going to put it on medium. All right, and we add all the other goodness to the pan. I am going to sneak in some veggies. This recipe does not call for veggies, but I'm putting in veggies. So I'm going to do 1 whole green pepper and then 2 medium carrots. They're all very small. I diced them very small. I did that just in case we have a child that doesn't like veggies. This is a great way I have found to incorporate it. The smaller it is, the easier that the flavors absorb into the veggies. And it's at this point, I feel like it's a one-pot meal. You won't have to add any other items to your dish or dinner if you don't want to. I'm going to let this sweat for just a few minutes. The veggies sweat just a few minutes before adding the rest. This has simmered and sauteed. Looks like the carrots are nicely softened. So let's get the rest of the items in the pot. This is 12 ounces of spaghetti sauce. 2 cups of chicken broth. 1 cup of water. 1 can of petite diced tomatoes. Now this recipe calls for 1 tablespoon of soy sauce, but I'm just going to use Worcestershire because, friends, I just think Worcestershire tastes better. Oh, a tablespoon. Now let's put in the spices. 1 tablespoon of paprika. It calls for Hungarian paprika, but I don't have Hungarian. I'm going to use regular. Teaspoon of Italian seasoning. And then it says about a teaspoon of salt. I'm just going to put that in there. 1/4 of a teaspoon of black pepper. A dash of red pepper. 1 bay leaf. That one seemed like a small one, so I'll do 2. It is smelling so good. Alright, the only item that is left to put in is macaroni. It says elbow macaroni, but I'm going to use this. I forget the name. It starts with a C, but I thought that looked cute. It calls for a cup, but I did a heavy cup. I want to see. I might add more. Yep, I'm going to add a little bit more. I'm going to say a cup and a half. Get this all stirred in here. And you want to cover this and let it cook for about 10 minutes because we want the pasta to be nice and soften. It has been 10 minutes. Let's take a look. Right, I'm going to see if the pasta is done. It doesn't look done, but let me take a look. Let me take a taste. Cool. It's like piping hot. The pasta is not done yet, so I'm going to let it cook for another probably 5 minutes, and then we'll go from there. Alright, oh yeah, that is about what we are looking for. This is hot. Perfect. It's a perfect amount of sauce on it. It's not too saucy, but just enough. That could feed an army, friends. I'm glad I added the extra half a cup of pasta because I think that did the right amount. Alright, quality control. This is a grease 9x13 pan. I greased it just in case they decide to heat it up in the oven. You don't want any of it to stick. Take the bay leaf out of it. There was one more in there. There we are. There we are. Friends, once I had all those dishes cooled down completely, I wrapped each of them with plastic wrap, and then I foiled them. The plastic wrap helps if they choose to preserve the food or dish, if they choose to freeze it. Now, obviously, after I had all that accomplished, I labeled each of the dishes of what it actually is, and then I mentioned that it is fully cooked. If you want to warm it up in the oven, 350 degrees for 20 to 25 minutes, or you can individually serve them in plates and warm them up in the microwave. Now, friends, if you are in the camp as myself, where you pull it out and need to get it heated and it's still very frozen, I would highly suggest, or what I have learned that works for me, so that way the dish is cooked evenly and not burnt around the edges and not so completely done in the middle. If you get my drift, I usually heat the oven to 300 degrees, place my frozen dinner in there. I'll give an example of lasagna, because lasagna is very dense. It takes a long time to cook when it is even thawed. I will do 300 degrees for about 45 minutes. Then I crank it up to 400 degrees, and then I'll cook it for 60 minutes. In this particular case, with those pasta dishes, they're not as dense as a lasagna. 300 degrees for 30 to 40 minutes, and then crank that up to 350 degrees for about 20 minutes, and it should come out just perfectly. Might be a little different from each oven to another. If you have experience of taking out completely frozen dinners and you have a tip you can provide us, please put those in the comments below. Friends, I did deliver those dishes to the family. She was so grateful to have those on hand, and they actually ate the taco spaghetti, and she reported that was so delicious. She said that sauce was incredible, and I'm telling you, that tomato sauce really allows the seasoning to attach to that pasta, and it tastes so good. So you've got to try that. At least out of the three, you got to try that one. But obviously she was very grateful, and the one thing that she mentioned, her surgery went phenomenal. She has about 3 months of recovery, and she said, the hardest part about this is letting go control. And not feeling like I'm a burden on my family or my husband. And I said, you know what? The Lord has placed people in our lives to take care of us in those times of need, and He has partnered you up with a phenomenal man. Allow him to take care of the family as you as well, because He is so pleased to do that. Friends, I hope you stay safe, and most importantly, stay encouraged. And if you haven't already, would love for you to subscribe and join me in future videos. Thanks so much. Y'all have a great day and take care.